Life is a struggle. I mean, look at the way we come into it. It's so traumatic, we're programmed not to remember the terror and pain. But that doesn't mean it goes away. It's how we cope with the ongoing suffering that lays our path to the future. This is all a very uplifting message, I know, but don't worry, it gets better. That's the overall tone of Ancient Magus Bride. It's sad, but somehow oozes out of it a glimmer, a powerful glimmer of hope. Speaking of somber but oddly uplifting messages, my name is Grant, and welcome to my last quote-unquote official video on Bonsai Pop. I'll explain more later. This week, we're covering an anime that ties into literally everything I'm feeling. Good and bad. The Ancient Magus Bride, set in the beautiful English countryside where magic is in the details. This series is as unassuming as a circle of mushrooms in the woods. It's not the typical anime we deal with here, but Mike and I both agreed it's so good it needed a dedicated episode. At least 1. A multi-level narrative, The Ancient Magus Bride delves into not only the forgotten beliefs of the Celts and their neighbor folk, but also what it's like to have eyes that can see beyond the surface and how it can affect our minds and socialization. And of course, there's a little magic. But there's always a little magic, isn't there? It's important to remember that with eyes like these, not only can you see further into the dark, but if you look the other way, you can truly see further into the light. However, it's walking the tightrope between the two that proves to be the hardest. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to the story of a young girl lost in the dark and a sociopathic hybrid fae who showed her the way out. To a world where the fae haven't totally left us behind to our inevitable nuclear and/or viral holocaust. This is the story of the Ancient Magus Bride. The last story you never knew. Chise Hatori has the sight. She's able to see and interact with a whole other realm of existence that transcends the humdrum material world. A realm where spirits of old can be witnessed interacting with our modern environment. Spirits who traditionally did not want to and were not meant to always be seen. There's no room for spirituality in our fast-paced, no-nonsense modern society. No scientific evidence or classification for beings that fit between realms of existence. So to witness these phenomena at a very young age set Chise on a dark path of isolation. It doesn't help that she's from Japan, where standing out at all can mark you as an outcast. Without guidance, she was left to be tormented by her nightmarish visions, which no one could explain. Every civilization that has ever existed had its own set of superstitions, gods, and demons. They were used to explain inexplicable circumstances, to educate people on how to live a safe life, to protect people's natural environment, and to respect the world around them. However, these lessons were often taught through the looking glass of fear, or at least a deep sense of caution. For instance, while the Fae may keep your garden beautiful, they may also spirit you away, never to be seen again. And they prefer not to be seen without their consent. All this reminds me, let me introduce you to something really cool. As I said, this is my last story you never knew on this channel. I've started a dedicated channel called The Story You Never Knew, and just launched a video all about the beautiful insanity that is fairies. Fairies, the story you never knew. It's a weird, wild ride that I made dang sure was moving and informative. That's what Mike said anyway, because he's the sweetest. I went to another dimension and pushed the limits of my sanity to bring the story you sure as hell did not know about fairies. I've poured my heart and soul into this channel, and it would mean the world if you checked it out. It'll be everything existential, from fairies to the atom bomb to witches to cyborgs. Real-life cyborgs, yeah. And it's where I'll be moving forward. So I hope you'll join the mind-melting party at the end of this video. That being said, this transition has been a roller coaster. It's the easiest thing I've ever done, and the hardest one too. It's easy because I'm excited for the new, but there's been some dark times too. Anxiety about uncertainty, you know how it goes. I've felt the whole spectrum. I'm sure most can relate, including, but not limited to, Chise. She relates quite extremely. When we meet Chise officially, she's completely given up on living. After a life of loneliness, loss, and isolation due to the people around her not understanding her sight, she found death to be the only way to end the pain. Until a black market auctioneer inspired her to sell herself into slavery. At least she could give herself to someone who actually wanted her that way. Side note, not a recommended choice. Try therapy first. It's on the auction block, bound in chains, that Chise first comes face to face with Elias Ainsworth. An imposingly tall, black-clad mage with a wolf skull sporting goat horns for a head who buys her immediately for an exorbitant amount of money. The question is why? The answer is complex, but on the outside, it's simply because Chise is what's known as a Sleigh Beggy. In the Ancient Magus Bride, a Sleigh Beggy is a human with a natural affinity towards the Fae. Because of this, the Fae are drawn to them, and the Sleigh Beggy absorbs an absurd amount of magic at the cost of their natural lifespan. These people are exceedingly rare, and not all of them are gifted with the sight, but all of them suffer in life because of the Fae's love. The love of a Fae can be a double-edged sword, as seen in episode 1, where Chise is almost spirited away to the fairy realm forever. However, because of their natural affinity for magic and the love of the Fae, a Sleigh Beggy can become an extremely powerful mage. As Chise is warped back to Ainsworth's cabin in the English countryside, Ainsworth explains it's his intention to make her his apprentice. Sleigh Beggy are a Fae of the Manx Gaelic in the Isle of Man, depicted as humanoid with bird's feet, hating salt, and being quick to anger. They were considered the first residents of the Isle of Man. Along with her red hair, this could be why the neighbors call Chise Robin. There are more underlying details to Ainsworth's motives, though. After rescuing Chise from her first encounter with the English fairies, he expresses his desire to marry her. And yeah, she's 15, and he's a skull man. I don't know what you expected. It's anime. For as sinister as Ainsworth appears, his demeanor is generally the exact opposite, but he struggles deeply with emotion. It's hard to pinpoint whether or not he can feel, or if he simply doesn't understand how to. Meanwhile, Chise's entire existence is thrown into upheaval as she's graciously accepted into a new, seemingly loving home. Up until this point, she had known nothing but pain and alienation, and despite everything appearing to go perfect for her in the end, scars fade, but never go away. Her new home and care is juxtaposed with what she's always known, and letting go of that can be incredibly difficult, especially when the one person you loved the most tried to kill you. One of Chise's earliest memories is her mother attempting to strangle her to death. Chise Hatori was also gifted with the sight and understood her daughter, but they were both abandoned by Chise's husband, who took her son with him. Left alone with her tormented daughter and dealing with the loss of her husband and child while trying to maintain a household proved too much for her, causing a mental break that let a demon into her mind. While strangling Chise, she remarks that she never should have given birth to her. This most likely alludes to her passing on her sight, which she saw as a curse, but is also likely mixed in with the rage she was feeling at the time. However, she snaps out of it. Not being able to live with what she had done, she jumps out the window to her death, leaving Chise completely alone to deal with what had just happened. From that point on, Chise always felt a deep sense that her existence was a burden, not only on herself, but others as she passed around from place to place. On the other hand, Ainsworth is also a complicated individual. He was born from the shadow of the forest and is said to be made of both human and fae elements. Like Chise, who could be considered a queen bee-like figure to the Fae, Ainsworth walks the line between two worlds. Originally a mindless beast who devoured humans in the woods, he was picked up and taught to be a mage, as well as how to care for living creatures. He does, however, have to maintain control over his rage in times of stress. Like Chise, he feels extremely alone in the world, not understanding his origin or purpose. Now, I'd like to make a comparison. It's been shown that high intelligence can lead to mood disorders. A study done on Mensa, basically really smart people, big brain, high IQ, showed that over a quarter of them were diagnosed with some form of depression, and 20% of them suffered from an anxiety disorder. Part of this could be because they're lonely, because often people in Mensa talk a lot about how they're in Mensa, but there is clearly scientific merit to the idea that Chise's sight is a lot to handle. She's able to look into a world veiled to most people around her. This is similar to what it's like for the highly intelligent. I also think it's no coincidence that magic ability is generally gauged by points in intelligence. It's no wonder the Ancient Magus Bride deals so heavily with themes of isolation, depression, and anxiety. For people who can see a step beyond what's in front of them, the worlds can be full of darkness and anxieties. Like an open board of chess, all situations can end in victory or defeat. But being able to see each step towards either end results in limitless possibilities, both good and bad, which can easily overwhelm the mind. Anxiety. This limitless potential for success and failures with only guesswork to go off of can lead to feelings of futility, depression. While these feelings can certainly overtake your outlook on life, it's generally a sense of compassion that can wrench an individual free from the grips of the darkness. For Chise and Ainsworth, they both found another individual that completes them, shows them the kind of emotion and care they needed to get up and start walking again. Like the world these two live in, the Ancient Magus Bride itself was influenced by the cultural ideas of Britain and the Celts. Ainsworth, in particular, is full of subtle nuances. He's tortured by this struggle between what he perceives as his nature and how he wants to be. While arguably terrifying, his skull head is actually a sign of his true nature, and that nature isn't of a monster. In Celtic mythology, wolves were seen not as terrifying predators, but instead as helpers and guides, as well as positive symbols of transformation. Even his goat horns, which generally are seen as satanic from an American cultural standpoint, even these had an entirely different meaning to the Celts. The goat was seen to represent one of the most valued aspects of Celtic life: closeness to nature, as well as kindness and benevolence. For someone so torn between humanity and nature, Ainsworth is undeniably a character with a benevolence at his core. Yet, having no mother or father, seemingly coming from nothing and having deeply sinned by slaughtering men, it's no wonder his magical affinity is that of thorns. Nettles in the shadows, a wheel of hollies, 10 folds and 20 folds weaves the spider's thread of the nest to the branch, is a clear reference to the part of the forest that birthed him, but also representative of his personal crown of thorns he carries throughout his existence. While tutoring and caring for Chise can be seen as a kind of repentance, she in turn helps him begin to understand emotion as well. Interestingly, a robin was said to comfort Jesus on the crucifix by staying in his crown of thorns and singing him songs. Ancient Magus Bride is rife with symbolism and culture, but also a message for those of us going through trials. Healing takes time. It takes thought and effort, and it can be helped along by another. There's someone for everyone out there, whether you wear a crown of thorns or are a robin with a broken wing. Chise and Elias were able to fit their bizarrely shaped puzzle pieces together to strive towards a life too beautiful to end purposefully. There's a whole lot more to talk about in the future, and I know Mike was jealous that I got to take this one, but it just fits too perfectly with my future endeavors. So if you liked this, if you liked the Ancient Magus Bride, if you just need some cheering up after all the craziness going on in the world, then check out the weird, mind-melting wild ride that is Fairies, the story you never knew. I put a lot into this. I think you'll get a lot out of it.